All cases of kidnappings have one way or another a single basis. Most of the witnesses who survived know it is the survivors of the abduction who testify to the fear and pain experienced, the complete lack of compassion of the creatures who abducted them. We do not know the logic of the aliens and their plans, but nevertheless we must not stop unwinding the tangle of secrets and riddles in order to say once and for all, we are people, we are the humanity of planet Earth, and we cannot be treated like experimental animals. Although I prefer to remain Mr. Incognito for you and for my own reasons, risking my reputation and possibly my life, I want to publish another secret testimony and excerpts from secret protocols that will shed light on the mysterious UFO abductions that regularly occur throughout the United Kingdom, from Dublin in the west and London in the east. Together with you, we will bring to light the dark forces trying to play with our lives and fate. Constable Moore, what do you have? Answer me, Central. A 40-year-old thin officer from the Hertfordshire County Police Department reached for his walkie-talkie and picked up the intercom. Constable Moore is in touch, patrolling Highway 12-3, London Street, Albans, without incident. I understand you. Constable Moore accelerated and leaned a little closer to the steering wheel. Are there any more donuts left? His partner, 30-year-old Constable Harry Taylor, took the box from the panel, opened it, and handed it to Henry Moore, not just a partner but also a close friend who, in case of danger, could cover his back, and during the festivities treat him to a beer in any of the pubs of Street Albans, a town just 30 kilometers from London in the north of Hertfordshire. Henry took the donut, but immediately put it back in the box. He slowed down. What kind of phenomenon is this? Where? Henry pulled over to the side of the road, and the headlights illuminated the silhouette of a naked woman who was just standing on the side of the road, peering into the roadside field. The woman did not react to what was happening in any way. The police officers who arrived did not cause any reaction. Miss, are you all right? Miss? Henry unbuckled his holster and put his hand on his service Glock 17. He nodded at Taylor. Check her out. Taylor shrugged his shoulders. Another lost drug addict who fucked up all their clothes somewhere. But duty is duty. Taylor approached the woman. Wow, she's beautiful. Taylor appraisingly ran his gaze over the girl's hips and buttocks. Miss? Suddenly, the unexpected happened. The girl howled in her throat, then the howl turned into a squeal. She abruptly turned to the dumbfounded Taylor and clawed at the man's face with her nails. Your mother! The constable tried to pull the woman's hands away from her face, but she jumped on him, wrapped her legs around him, and almost knocked him to the side of the road. Suddenly, something bumped nearby and Taylor felt the woman's body go limp and lose its former strength. The grip loosened. He picked up the woman and laid her on the gravel of the curb. He stood up, rubbing his neck. Henry patted him on the shoulder. How are you? It's okay. Listen, aren't you overdoing it? Henry Moore looked excitedly at the girl who was lying on her stomach. Turn her over on her side. You never know, she might choke. Well, should I have waited for her to scratch out your eyes? Harry leaned into the car, took out the intercom. Central, Crew 12, Harry Taylor. Central, what do you have? Ambulance and backup are required on Highway 12-3, London Street, Albans. Kilometer 5 in the McMurphy Farm area. From the Daily Incident Report, Constable Henry Moore. On Highway 12-3, a 25 to 30-year-old woman was detained and then arrested by me and my partners. The woman was conscious, but did not respond to any questions, and no signs of violence were found during the initial external examination. During the arrest, due to the threat to his life, he was forced to use force. I will give an explanation in more detail in my personal report. The arrested woman has been sent to the Street Albans District Police Department. Put something on her, and stop making a circus here. Everyone at their jobs. Sergeant Rodriguez dispersed the constables, who were huddled by the panoramic glass separating the interrogation room from the main area of the station. The glass was transparent only from the outside, and the girl saw it as a mirror in the room. A couple of minutes later, Rodriguez entered the room and put a wide blanket on the shoulders of the girl, who was sitting motionless and staring at one point in front of her. He sat down opposite, barely squeezing his belly between the table and the chair. He would have to order the investigator's chair to be unfastened. Miss, you're safe. Let's be clear about what happened to you. The girl looked into the surgeon's eyes for a moment with despair, pain, and hope. but immediately looked away and began to sob. "Miss, what happened to you?" Suddenly, the girl laughed hysterically, began to scream and tear off the blanket. Rodriguez hurriedly pressed the alarm button under the table. An inner squad of 2 black police officers ran into the room. To her cell alone. Follow closely, and finally call a doctor. "What are you pulling the rubber for?" Rodriguez's heart was pounding fast, and his hands were shaking. It was the first time he had seen such a thing in 12 years of service. In addition, he was confused by the symmetrical round wounds that he saw on the shoulders and collarbones of the arrested woman. What did she have to go through? There was another scarecrow. Was there really a wild animal in human form in the vicinity of the old, quiet Albin? From the entries in the operational log, the arrested woman was escorted to solitary confinement, shows signs of insanity, possibly the effect of drugs, is aggressive. A doctor has been called for an examination. The name of the arrested woman could not be established. 2 days later, the Maudsley Psychiatric Hospital in South London might have seemed to any visitor an office, a factory, a nursing home, in general, anything but a mental hospital. Once a hospital for British soldiers participating in the First World War, was equipped in large spacious wards, then the building became unclaimed, and since 1927 it has been converted into a mental hospital for acute and chronic patients. In those years, the mentally ill were treated with ice water, beatings, hunger, and loneliness. Nowadays, everything has changed. Dr. Palmer went to the door to the room and took out the patient's card from a special wall shelf, glanced briefly through a window no bigger than a desk book. The patient was sitting on the floor and looking out of a transparent window made of shockproof glass, humming softly. The elderly doctor shook his head sympathetically and opened the card. The name is unknown. Last name, unknown. Age, presumably 25 to 30 years old. The diagnosis is acute mental disorder, paranoid delirium, bipolar disorder, amnesia. The doctor shook his head again. So young, beautiful, and so unhappy. The doctor's heart sank. He sympathized with each patient, as with a loved one. I sincerely tried to help, and I perceive every fiasco as a personal defeat. He ran his eyes over the lower allowance in the card. There are no traces of sexual violence. No internal organ damage has been identified except for symmetrical burns of the skin were found on the shoulder blades, collarbones, thighs, buttocks, and knees. The edge of the burns is smooth, round, deepening up to 10 to 12 mm. Computed tomography and MRI revealed similar symmetrical burns up to 1 mm deep on the tissues of the aorta, uterus, liver, spleen, and pancreas. The bones of the cranial arches have traces grooves extending from the back of the head to the forehead. Were revealed during the sanitary treatment of the patient. Cuts of the scalp. An X-ray was performed. This was followed by a review of the dental examination. Dr. Palmer took the card and went to his office. He was tormented by uncertainty. Deep symmetrical burns of the skin and similar burns of organs. Doctors do something similar to patients during laparoscopy, when surgical instruments are inserted into the internal organs through small punctures in the skin. But why burns? Dictaphone recording, Maudsley Psychiatric Hospital, Dr. G. Palmer. You and I have been through a long period, I admit. At first your case seemed hopeless, Miss Wilt. It's just a formality. We have to record your memories. It may help other patients in the future. Of course, doctor. Then let me start, and you continue. So you claim that an attempt was made on your life. So? Yes, but I don't remember who kidnapped me. Maybe I dreamed it all. I remember the pain, the shame, the humiliation. But there is a persistent feeling that I myself agreed to all this. There was an unpleasant, unknown smell of something medical, dangerous, and prickly in my nostrils. It was scary. The clothes flew apart at the seams with a bang and flew off the body. An unknown and invisible force jerked the body up, leveled it horizontally, and released it. The girl fell onto a hard table and stuck to it tightly. It wasn't like moving an arm or a leg. It was hard to even say a few words. Please don't know? Immediately, a slight noise rang in my head, from which hissing, quiet words were formed. We were allowed to. We have an agreement with your government. The girl tried to scream but couldn't. Silhouettes of creatures with huge heads, gray-green skin, and huge black eyes appeared above her, full of inevitability and cruelty, like insects that clung to and methodically butchered their prey with their mandibles. The eyes penetrated into the soul, suppressed the will, The girl felt a warm trickle flowing down the inside of her thighs. She couldn't help being scared. The liquid was immediately sucked in by the table on which the body was located. Out of the corner of her eye, the girl, who was stupefied with fear, pressed against the table, saw a huge flask. A naked black man was resting in it, his eyes bulging with fear. The flask was filled with a transparent yellow liquid. The man was dead. No need. The girl screamed with the last of her strength. And immediately a hissing voice in my head. We were allowed to. We have an agreement with your government. Despair filled my heart. The girl stopped screaming. Tears rolled down her cheeks from the corners of her eyes. The last thing she remembered was how an unknown device emitting a red glow began to descend on her from above from the ceiling. The gray-green creatures manually moved the device from the woman's head to her feet. Unbearable pain clouded consciousness, flooded with black water and suppressed understanding of what was happening. A naked girl was walking along the side of the road, occasionally stumbling but not falling. She shuffled her bare heels on the gravel. If there had been another person next to her at that moment, he would have heard the girl whisper in a barely audible voice, "I agree, I agree, I agree." Before she lost consciousness on the alien ship, the woman heard a hissing whisper in her head. "We need your consent. If you refuse, we will take your body. We have an agreement with your government." Adrenaline spurred consciousness. The girl screamed with the last of her strength. "I agree." As it turned out later, the woman's name was Rhoda Walt, 27 years old. The testimony of Constable Taylor and Moore in unison echoes the same thing. Picked up on Highway 12-3, assaulted a constable, arrested, acted within permissible force. Sergeant Rodriguez answered about the same thing, interspersing his testimony with obscenities and threats to file a dismissal report. The only one who said a little more was Dr. Palmer. But a year after recording the interview with patient Walt, the doctor was run over by a truck near the village of Amberley in southern England. The trail of Walt herself was lost after Palmer's death. The patient was transferred to a closed psychiatric clinic somewhere on the border with Scotland. Currently, nothing is known about her. In the quiet Russian wilderness in the east of the country, on the road between two villages, two policemen examined the lifeless body of a naked man. "Are you drunk or something?" "God knows," called the task force. "A criminal corpse. Look, the whole chest is covered in some kind of burns. Possibly a gunshot. Oh fuck, his stomach is ripped open. Holy shit, I just needed another chick."